welcome to episode 44 of the Gambots podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and this is my co host.
It's Christian.
This week, I read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. Christian and I both watched the movie Cooties, and Christian is going to talk about the movie Hellboy that was just released on DVD. And finally, we're going to discuss the Sony Disney saga involving Spider-Man.
Well, first, Eric, you read Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief, which is book one of a whole series, I believe. So what did you think of this one?
I was really surprised by this one, Christian. I really enjoyed this one. It was a recommendation by a friend of a friend, and I'd always thought these were more children's books, and they really are. It follows the 12-year-old Percy Jackson as he goes on a quest, but really it reminded me more of like a book one of the Harry Potter series, where even an adult would enjoy it.
I knew this was young adult. I was excited to see what you thought of it as a full adult to see if it's still kind of held up.
Yeah, so the book follows the basically quest of Percy Jackson as he discovers that he is a demigod. There's going to be some spoilers in this. This book was released in 2005, but I'm not going to go into the final spoilers. But he is the son of one of the gods. You find out who that god is, and then he has to go on a quest to essentially stop a war between the gods because Zeus's lightning bolt was stolen. So he has to find out who stole it and get it back to Zeus, or else there's going to be a war between the three most powerful of the gods. And what I really liked about this book is it's written by Rick Riordan, and it was allegedly he got the idea when his son asked him to tell him stories, and his son was actually learning about Greek history at the time, and his son also suffers from dyslexia and ADHD. So in this story, Riordan made a character that suffers from dyslexia and ADHD. Percy has that, but then they explain because he's a demigod, he has hyper-focused battle sense, and dyslexia comes from he's more attuned to reading Greek letters and things like that. So I like that he used his son as an inspiration for this. I thought that was a pretty cool back note on this one.
Yeah, I do like that. It's a cool way to turn what a lot of people would perceive as like a weakness into like something cool that has a purpose.
Yeah, just going on a little bit more, I had said I had gotten Harry Potter vibes from this book. I think it's kind of funny. The book basically follows three characters. It's Percy himself, his friend Annabelle, who's also a demigod, and then a satyr whose name is Grover. And so you have like a trio of friends going on this quest trying to stop something very, very much like Harry Potter. But I looked ahead a little bit in the future books, and it looks like the cast actually rotates a little bit, where Percy goes on a quest with other people instead of the same characters every time, which I think is a cool spin on it.
Yeah, you say Grover, and all I can think of is the Sesame Street character. Do you think this is going to turn into like a Harry Potter, where like if it's all demigods and like half humans, even if they do split the cast up and they like rotate through different people, is it going to be like a Hogwarts situation where they're all in like classes together and are going on like adventures together?
I'm torn. I really thought that's the direction they were going after the first book because they have a area where the demigods all hang out, but it's not a Hogwarts. It's a summer camp, but some people can stay there full time. And I thought like Percy was going to stay there as a full time student or whatever camper, but he ended up going back to the real world. So now it seems like instead of the school year, my guess is that every book's going to be him doing some sort of adventure during his 3 month summer camp. So it's like Harry Potter, but slightly different.
Who is the god that is one of Percy's parents, or is that the spoiler you don't want to go?
I don't think it's really a spoiler at this point. I mean, there's a movie, and it comes up within the first, I don't know, 25% of the book. Like his parents Poseidon, his dad's Poseidon, and it's heavily hinted at early on because they talk about the sea and all this stuff. Where, if you're a kid, maybe you want to figure it out, but I think most adult readers would be able to pick that out pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I figured since it was like Zeus's lightning bolt, and I mean, just the way stories usually go, I just assumed he was going to be Zeus's son.
Yeah, so I'm glad they didn't go in that direction. I feel like I used to really be into Greek mythology when I was younger, and I never liked Zeus that much. So I'm glad Poseidon got a showing on this one. But I will say I really did like what they did with the Greek mythology in this one. They gave it a little bit of a 21st century update in a way that you would do when you're making a young adult book. But you do meet a lot of different monsters in this one and gods. There's satyrs, centaurs, manticores, minotaurs, Medusa, Cerberus, and they all have a little bit of a different spin on them, which I like. Like for example, the satyrs, they stuff their shoes so that they can walk around and hide their goat legs, and they wear like Rasta hats to hide their horns. So they exist in the real world, but they're all like in hiding in some way. It really reminds me a little bit, not much, but like American Gods Light, where these things exist and they're still running around the mortal world, just like no one notices them.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Do we get a real look at any of the like actual Greek gods? I mean, I know it focuses around Zeus's lightning bolt getting stolen, but how much of the story actually involves the original like mythological gods?
Surprisingly, a lot actually. So you meet Zeus, you meet Poseidon, you meet Hades, and so that's like the big three. And you meet Ares, and then Hephaestus. I forget how you pronounce his name.
Hephaestus.
Hephaestus, yeah, he's like sort of ancillary where you don't meet him, but he comes into the story a little bit, and then you actually meet a lot of the gods and goddesses' children. So yeah, you did meet a lot more than I thought you would, especially for a first book.
That's cool, man. Like I keep telling myself that I should pick this up, and I think the fact that it's young adult kind of stops me. Like I've read YA books that have been pretty good, and I've also read ones that have been really not. But I was real into Greek mythology as a kid, and I feel like I would enjoy this.
Yeah, I will say it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would. I was bored and I wanted an easy book to read. I think I ended up I have like the library app on your phone so I can get ebooks. It was like 300 pages on a phone, so I don't know what that actually translates to into real book pages. I read it in about 3 days. It's a really quick read and it's a fun one, but you can definitely tell that it is directed towards it's written for a younger audience, so that's why it's such a quick read. But I legitimately wish I had read this book a bit early. Like I would have loved this, I think, when I was in middle school or something like that. Currently, it sits at a 4.24 out of 5 on Goodreads, and there was a film adaptation in 2010 which I never saw, but I'm pretty sure it like bombed. I don't think it did very well because it did not get a sequel.
It did get a sequel.
It did?
Yeah, there were two of them.
Did you see them?
I didn't see either. It was The Lightning Thief and oh god.
Something on the. I'm reading the second one right, or I downloaded the second one. I can't remember the name. It's like On the Sea of Despair or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I didn't know it got a second one. So overall, I would definitely suggest if you like Harry Potter style books or you like young adult fiction or things like that, I would check this one out. It's definitely a really quick read.
Yeah, I had wanted to, if I had time this week, I was gonna try and watch the movie just so the two of us could have like a compare contrast because I did hear that the movie was awful and nobody hates the film adaptations more than Rick Riordan does.
Really, I did not know that.
Oh yeah, he is very vocal on like Twitter and Tumblr about how unhappy he is with the movies.
I will say movie adaptations of kids books have actually, or not kid, well, young adult kids books, however you want to classify it, has actually turned me away from wanting to read these because I saw the previews for Percy Jackson and I did not think it looked very good. Same with I think it was Aragon or something like that, the one with the dragon. I never read those, but people say the book is like really good.
Yeah, the book was famous back in the day because it was published by like a 15-year-old.
Really?
Yeah, he was like maybe he was 17, but like he was super young for getting like his first novel published. And yeah, the I had friends that read it and they all said it was great and the movie was fine. Like I remember watching it and enjoying it, but like it doesn't really stick with me. I remember Jeremy Irons is in it and basically nothing else.
You know what's funny is, I read all the Harry Potter books and I do not like the movies. I like the first three movies. I really like the third one. I think that's by far the best one. But there are people out there who have only seen the movies, and it's weird because the books are so much better.
Yeah, those people are wild to me. Like I know a bunch of people that are like, "Oh yeah, I watched the movies," and I'm like, like yeah, some of them are awful. Honestly, to me anyway. Like I walked out of the sixth one physically angry.
Was what was the sixth one? Was that Half Blood Prince?
Yeah,
Yeah, that was bad. My least favorite one, I think, is the fourth one because they just started adding scenes that were not in the book, and it was already like a long movie.
yeah, yeah. I think my favorites are 7 and 8. I've watched them a whole bunch of times. Yeah, we're but we're off track. So, you said you would recommend this?
Yeah, I definitely would recommend checking it out. Especially, I do want to give a shout out to, I think it's called OneDrive or Overdrive or something like that. It's a library app where, depending on where you are, you can just download audiobooks and ebooks to your phone or your tablet. It's really useful. And I've actually been reading a fair bit more now because I've downloaded that and I don't have to go to the library to pick up a book.
Well, yeah, I hope you stick with the series, and I know it has like 2 or 3 spin-off series as well, where they go into like Norse gods and stuff too. So I'll be interested to see if you stick with it that far or not.
I do want to finish the five of the main series, and then we'll see if I end up going to the spin-offs or not. This week, both Christian and I watched the movie Cooties. Christian, you were the one who picked this one to watch this week. What drew you to this movie?
The cover art and the title. To be honest, I picked this, and honestly, I didn't even watch the trailer. Like I saw who was in it, I saw the name of the movie and like the synopsis on Hulu, and I was like, you know what, I'm in. I'm in on this for sure. So I went into it basically completely blind.
So when you said we should watch this one, I watched the trailer and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna love this movie. And then I watched it and was severely disappointed. I thought the
Were
trailer
you?
was better than the movie. I mean, it was fine, but the trailer had like all the good stuff I wanted, and then a lot of this movie just dragged on for parts.
Yeah. So the basic plot of this movie is that there is a zombie plague that only affects prepubescent people. So it's only kids. Anyone who's gone through puberty only gets like mild flu symptoms and nothing else, whereas the kids go crazy and start eating people. And so the teachers of this like summer school are like barring themselves in their classrooms trying to survive all these kids who are now trying to eat them.
Yeah, and that is such a good premise.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And they have a crazy cast. They have Elijah Wood, Rainn Wilson, Jack McBrayer, Hurley from Lost.
Yeah. Oh, Hurley from Lost. So my favorite character by a mile was the weird guy, the weird teacher who was shown at the beginning to be reading a book called How to Have a Normal Conversation.
Yeah, I think his name was Doug.
Yeah, Doug was the best. Just the line sometimes he's talking about how he had like a brain injury as a child, and then he says, "So you may or may not have noticed sometimes when I'm talking, I use the wrong rowboat," and just carries on. And like he had me cracking up.
Yeah, I didn't like him at first, but he grew on me, especially when I guess he's a science teacher and he was just rummaging around in the kid's brain, and he had the best lines in the movie. And I want to say, I think he really was like the premise of this makes it seem like it's going to be a comedy horror film. I think he was really the only comedic relief in it. The rest of it was pretty much just a horror film.
Yeah, that's I have in my notes here like it couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Like it suffered from not being sure if it wanted to be more comedy or more horror, so they didn't really go 100% in either direction, and it definitely didn't walk the line of being both quite as well as like Zombieland did, because that's what this felt like to me. It felt like a riff on Zombieland that didn't quite land where they wanted it to.
Yeah, like Zombieland or maybe Shaun of the Dead, like they had the quick cuts in a couple of the things where that they've had in Evil Dead and that they replicated in Shaun of the Dead, but it wasn't even done to a very good effect, and then they never like did it again. Like there weren't what makes a lot of those movies good is there's like repeat gags or things that like they bring the jokes back, and this one didn't have that at all.
It had one that I really thought was funny the first time, And then like the second, third, and fourth time it popped up, I was kind of done with it, which was Rainn Wilson struggling over the dual rear wheel axle or whatever he was trying to say. And like, because each time it happened, it went on too long.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, that was like, I was like, I can't believe they're going for this again.
Yeah, it went on much too long. Yeah, Rainn Wilson is in this movie. Elijah Wood is in this movie. Alison Pill is in this movie. Like, Jack McBrayer, who I feel like I've covered on a couple other episodes of this, who I love, is in this. And like, they were acting their hearts out, and it wasn't fully doing it for me.
Yeah, I don't think the script was very strong, but I do gotta say, one of my favorite scenes was Hurley sitting in the car, tripping balls after doing mushrooms, just watching kids kill each other, like not sure if it's really happening or not.
Yeah, his walkie-talkie call to the principal where he was like, I think the kids might be eating the teachers, but I'm on medication, so I may be not seeing what I think I'm seeing. And then when the giraffe showed up in his van, and he's like, "Oh man, did you take mushrooms too?"
One complaint I did have about this movie though is they are not clear what this disease is. I'm going to just like list what they say and then things that happen. So, the kids get the disease from eating tainted chicken nuggets. But it's very unclear on how it's transmitted. There's a scene of a kid just going around like scratching other kids and they have it. Like so it just a scratch does it, but there's no transfer of bodily fluids. They say it's a virus, so when you just need to touch the person, the adults don't change because they hit puberty. But then, and part of the explanation, Doug says that their brains are rotting, so all they know how to really do is jump and eat and run. But then you have these kids taking out communication systems. You have them working as groups. You have them hunting them. Like things that do not make any sense for this disease. Like they're showing actual intelligence. And also the kids are super strong. They rip one of the teacher's arms off. That's pretty hard to do, man.
Oh yeah, and when the kid is running through the playground scratching people, the incubation period on this disease is like a second.
Well, it's weird because the first girl was like diseased. It took her like a full day.
Yeah, and the other kid takes like maybe 10, 15 minutes between when like he goes to the nurse's office. And yeah, when he's scratching kids on the playground, the incubation period is on it's 10 seconds tops. Like he scratches them, and by the time he makes it to the next kid, the previous kid is already like full zombie.
I don't know if you picked it up. My favorite line in this movie is just some random teacher who ran by their group and says, "Follow me, I do CrossFit," and then he just ran outside and got killed. I was dying at that line actually.
Yep. Yeah, I did like him.
What worked on this movie for you and what didn't work?
I think the cast worked. Like I said, they were working real hard. I did like the plot, like the broad strokes anyway. I really did like the whole premise of the film. I could have done without the like love triangle that they shoehorned into it. And I mean, I know how you feel about romantic subplots. But yeah, the whole Rainn Wilson Elijah Wood dynamic was pretty tired by the end.
It's weird too. Like this movie was paced oddly.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember stopping at 37 minutes in and thinking like I thought this would be funnier. The first 20 minutes are essentially setting up Elijah Wood as just a horrible teacher, and being like a creeper. And then the next 20 minutes are all the kids breaking out, and then they're just hanging out in rooms for a lot of it, and then it starts to pick up when they go into ductwork, and then you get to the last 20 or 30 minutes when they finally suit up and start fighting the kids, and that's when I really started liking the movie. That's what I thought it was going to be the whole time, was just teachers fighting kids, and it wasn't. So I was really disappointed, but I did like the last 20, 30 minutes of it.
Well, I want to go back just for a minute to you saying it sets up basically Elijah Wood being a terrible teacher. So he's the novelist, and he wants the kids to like read and critique his novel for schoolwork. And I'm thinking like, okay, he's not a teacher though. Like he's a sub, and he's just doing this job because he has no money or whatever. And he lied to Alison Pill. But then towards the end of the movie, he's like, "Oh, I was lying. I am really a teacher, and I didn't want to tell you that because I felt like a failure." And I was like, so he's not. Like, he is actually a teacher, and he's still this bad at his job.
Did you like the name of his book though?
Oh my god. I had to pause it. Like, because I missed probably 3 or 4 full lines of dialogue because I was laughing so hard. His book is about a haunted boat or an evil possessed boat, and it's called Keel Them All. And I seriously, like, I had to pause the movie.
So that's the thing. Like they had a couple funny things here and there, but like overall, it just I wish they had leaned more into the comedic side because when I was watching it, I felt like they took a comedic premise and they're like, all right, let's turn this into a horror movie. But like you said, not commit 100% to horror. So it's just like a weird premise, some comedy, and then a lot of gore that I don't think really lands.
Yeah, that's what that was the first thing that I really noticed was I expected this to be, like I said, like almost a Zombieland where it's mostly comedy, and it became gruesome very quickly. Like when he pulls that girl's hair and like the hair rips off of her skull, and I was like, "Ooh, I don't like that."
Yeah, and then she just bites his cheek off.
Yeah, which then he peels off later, and I was not a fan of that either.
I will say the best gruesome part about this though was when they killed the 13-year-old patriot and they ran the chicken through him. I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I also liked when they were eating the vice principal and Rainn Wilson was like, "Hey, listen, we've all wanted to do that to the vice principal."
Oh my, that's the thing. Like this movie could have been good. It's like we mentioned some funny parts, and then it'd be like 10 minutes of nothing. One other thing I just want to point out was there's no way anyone would have eaten those infected chicken nuggets. They were like black and moldy. Kids aren't that stupid, and parents wouldn't serve them. There were clearly something wrong with them. Okay, so just some background facts on this. This film was released in 2015. It was directed by Jonathan Millot and Carrie Murnion. And why I find this really cool is they actually go on to direct the movie Bushwick, which I had talked about earlier this year, a movie that I really loved, starring Dave Bautista. And it's not the same premise, but it is the idea of like society's falling because an invading army was like attacking New York City, so it was hyper violent, but also like hyper realistic. And you could see some of the trappings that they ended up going in with that, like some of the camera work where they had some of the longer shots of them running through hallways. You would later see. So I thought that was just pretty cool that you had picked a movie, kind of a niche movie that they had also directed another more niche movie that I had also seen. Box office, this made $485,000 and or yeah, and I do not know what their budget was, but I imagine it was more than that.
Yeah, I know this did not get a wide release. It was a super limited release, and then it went to like video on demand.
Do you know how this fared with the critics?
The Rotten Tomatoes has it sitting at a 45 for critics and a 37% for audience. I would not put it much higher than 45. I'd probably put it higher than the 37, but like I said, like there was nothing really special about this movie. It didn't need to reinvent the wheel, but they could have put a little more of something into it.
Yeah, so if you guys want to check this out, it's on Hulu. It's an 88-minute runtime. Christian, would you recommend our audience check this one out?
Yeah, probably. Like if you're just cruising through Hulu and you're like, what can I watch? This will do the trick. It won't leave you jumping for joy, but it'll definitely entertain you for a little while. I was oddly hoping for like a sequel. Honest to God, like as soon as the credits rolled, I googled Cooties 2 to see if it was a thing because it ends on like a half-hearted cliffhanger, and it's like they had planned like a throw to a sequel, and then as they made it, they realized it wasn't going to work, but they committed to it anyway. And so like I was like, oh man, like this movie ended just as it was starting to get like interesting. I would love to see where it goes from here, but yeah, I mean, with it making less than half a mil, there's no way this movie's getting a sequel.
Yeah, I had actually read your show notes before I watched it, so then when we got to the end, I was like, oh, I can see where Christian was getting that because the ending they go out and they realize it's more of a pandemic than they thought, and I was getting vibes from like the ending of Resident Evil 1 to Resident Evil 2 where you go from like a like the mansion to the city and the city's destroyed. I don't know if I would recommend this one to our audience. This movie had the trappings to be good. Or at least a movie that I would really enjoy. I thought the premise was hilarious. They had a cast that I really liked, but they just, the final execution was flawed. If you're a big fan of anyone in that cast, I would say check it out. Otherwise, I would recommend checking out Bushwick instead. This week, Hellboy was released on DVD, and now, Christian, you had a chance to check this one out when it was in theaters. What did you think of this one?
uh, oh boy. So I did want to review this back when it first came out in theaters, but we were in the middle of our Marvel episodes, and so I decided I was just going to wait until it came out on DVD, but I definitely still wanted to talk about this. Guys, this movie is bad. Like, it's bad. And I guess, first and foremost, it's gross.
That's a little bit surprising to me because I really enjoyed the original two Hellboys, and I think they were PG-13. This one went to an R rating, didn't it?
Oh, yeah, and it runs to that R rating. It gets there very quickly. I also really liked the first two Hellboys. I was excited-ish when I heard another one was coming out. I was less excited when I found out it was a reboot, and then I was less excited still after I saw the first trailer, because the trailer made it out to be basically as bad as it was. I love David Harbour. I love him in The Newsroom. I love him in Stranger Things. He was a fine Hellboy, but you can't recast that role now. Ron Perlman is absolutely iconic in that role. It would be like trying to reboot Deadpool with a new actor. You just can't do it.
Yeah, that's the thing. Ron Perlman crushed the original role. I mean, I know he's in a ton of makeup, but his voice is so good for Hellboy.
Yeah, I don't know who thought it was necessary to reboot the series.
What about the rest of the cast? Did anyone do a particularly good job in this one?
I mean, everybody kind of tried, but I feel like they all kind of knew what they were in. I mean, speaking of Resident Evil, Mila Jovovich is the antagonist in this series. She plays Nimue. She's like an evil queen witch sorceress who wants to like bring hell to the planet Earth. So they're up against her. Ian McShane plays the father figure to Hellboy. And weirdly, if you'd have put a gun to my head and asked me who played the father figure in the original series, I would have told you Ian McShane. But I looked, and it was John Hurt, and that kind of blew my mind.
I know like none of the original cast makes an appearance, but there are characters from the comics. Do any of the characters from the comics and the original movies make an appearance? In this one, like Abe.
So yeah, I mean a little bit spoilery, but Abe Sapien only makes a like. I mean, I hesitate to even call it a cameo. It's basically a throw to the sequel. He he is the mission that they go on in the post-credit scene. It ends with them in Siberia invading this like Russian base, and at the bottom is a water tank that's labeled Abe Sapien, and you see like a fish hand come up against the glass. So that was a disappointment because I really liked him in the original series, and he was not in this at all. One of his partners in this is a girl who can talk to ghosts, and oh boy, is that really unpleasant. She's a medium, and she can touch a body of a recently deceased person, and then a like it looks like intestines shoot out of her mouth and form into the appearance of the person who had died, and then that starts talking.
Oh man, I always wanted to read Hellboy, but I never got around to it. I am curious if this takes more inspiration from the comics than the first movies did, or if like they just have gone out to left field with this.
I mean, it may. I could see the comics being kind of gross, and they just like they chilled it out a little bit to get the PG-13 rating before, which I think it was the right move. Because yeah, this movie just delights in like gore and body horror, and it's not very fun.
So were there actually any cool like monsters in this one? I know that the previews, I think they had a troll or something.
He does fight a troll. He fights, I think, three of them. That was like the fighting scenes were cool. Like so one of the reasons that I was still hopeful for this movie going, and even after the trailer looked disappointing, was that the monsters did look really cool. And some of them, the designs were outstanding. Like there's this thing that walks through Tower Bridge in London that it looks super cool. There's this thing that has like knives for legs, but they basically all just immediately engage in the gratuitous gore again, and it just became gross. And they're also only really on screen for about 5 minutes right at the end. The trolls are about halfway through. But there are some cool things. Like one of his other teammates is a were-jaguar, which is not something I had ever seen before. And the whole time he keeps dropping these Hulk lines like, "Oh, like don't upset me," or like, "You don't want to see my other side," or whatever. And he's got these scars, like these scratch scars on his face. I'm like, "Ah, he's a werewolf. He's a werewolf." And then at the end, he turned into a were-jaguar, and I was like, "Oh yes!"
Do you know how this one actually fared at the box office?
Not well is the answer, because pretty much everybody shared the opinion that I had. I mean, we can get into the Rotten Tomatoes first. It sits at 17% critic score, 53% audience. I think the 17 sounds about right, and that's definitely reflected in its box office rankings. So it grossed 21 million, just shy of 22 million in the US. Its budget was over 50 million, so it didn't even make half its budget back.
Man, I'm not surprised. I remember when this came out. I think at one point it was sitting at a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes critic score.
Yeah, yeah, that was the week it came out, I think. I remember seeing that and thinking like, oh boy.
Yeah, I was real just because I was actually kind of looking forward to this one, and I was like, might not be seeing it now.
Yeah, it was a pretty big disappointment.
I think I know the answer to this one, but would you recommend our audience check this one out?
Oh no, 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 no.
All right, now in the MCU news, Disney and Sony have essentially failed in their discussions to try and continue having Spider-Man appear in the MCU. And as it seems right now, he is basically out unceremoniously because of their disagreements. Do you know anything about this, Christian?
I know it makes me real mad. Yeah, so I'm not super familiar with the world of like contract negotiations, and especially as they pertain to this kind of stuff, but from what I understood, Sony was kind of leasing Spider-Man to Disney, and they were retaining 70% of the profits, and Disney was getting 30% or thereabouts. And after like the enormous success of Spider-Man as a character in the Disney franchises, Disney came back thinking they had a much better like bargaining position and said they wanted 50-50 or nothing. And so Sony said, "Nah," and walked.
I know that there were some talks in there too about it wasn't just like I think the MCU was also fronting a large majority of the costs of producing those movies, and Kevin Feige was like part of the negotiations was he had to be involved in it and he couldn't be anymore. So, but I think the main driver was the profit sharing, and they just could not come to a number.
Yeah. Like I get that it's business and I get that this kind of stuff happens, but I can't come to grips with the fact that this was allowed to happen. Like the MCU just set up Spider-Man basically as the face of Phase 4, and now he's just out.
Yeah, I haven't seen Homecoming, but that's primarily what I've heard, and I'm just sitting there thinking that's a bold move to do on a character you do not retain the rights for.
Yeah. Like yeah, in this latest one they absolutely 100% set him up as like the new face of the franchise. And yeah, I had posted on Facebook that we'd been going back and forth, me and some of my friends and coworkers, about how Sony can't be trusted to make a good Spider-Man movie by themselves. But they made Spider-Verse, and credit to them on that one. But the problem is that we're not going to get Spider-Verse. We're not going to get like a Spider-Man 2 Tobey Maguire, which was all right. We're going to get more Tom Holland movies that aren't a part of the MCU. And we're going to get MCU movies that can't talk about Spider-Man. So you're going to have Tom Holland running around, I guess, pretending like Iron Man never existed after he has this like very emotional situation in Far From Home. And we've got an MCU that has no Spider-Man after setting him up as the face of the franchise. And so it's like we're getting two half franchises that are both worse off than they would have been if they'd have never been combined in the first place.
Sorry, I did not hear about this. Tom Holland is still going to be playing Spider-Man for Sony. I assumed that they would just reboot Spider-Man at this point.
As far as I knew, they were planning on continuing making Tom Holland movies.
Did Tom Holland have a contract with them?
I'm not sure.
Because from what I've seen, he's pretty upset. I could not imagine him working with Sony.
I know a lot of people are upset. A lot of the actors. I saw an interview that was, I mean, goofy because it's Jeff Goldblum, but an interview with Jeff Goldblum where he basically found out on like live TV that Spider-Man wasn't part of the MCU anymore, and he's like, oh my goodness, this is just terrible.
I'm curious if Sony does this because they were in a pretty bad spot with Spider-Man movies when they agreed to this, and then in the past year they had Venom and Spider-Verse, and both of those, Venom was fine. It's not great, but it made them money, and then Spider-Verse was awesome. I feel like they might be feeling themselves, and they're going to regret it because I think their next movie coming out is Morbius, the vampire one. And I cannot imagine that's going to do gangbusters at the box office.
Yeah, it definitely seemed to me like both companies went into this negotiation thinking they were on better footing than they actually were.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Like Spider-Man essentially had a resurgence in the past 2 years. I mean, 2 or 3 years. Whenever Homecoming came out, he was in the Avengers movies. Far From Home just came out. The PS4 Spider-Man game was awesome. You had Spider-Verse, like he was riding high, and I think the character is going to fall off a cliff again, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's really a shame. Because I get invested in movies that get canceled, right? Like I've talked a little bit about this in the past with especially with like YA movies or like YA novels that get made into movies. Like I love The Golden Compass, and that never got a sequel, although it's getting a TV show now. I really like Beautiful Creatures when it came out, and that never got a sequel. But these are like one-offs. I can't, I just can't come to grips with the fact that there is a series like this that Spider-Man as Tom Holland has now been in 5 MCU properties. He's like universally beloved, and these two companies are just are having a disagreement, and so they're just like nobody gets Spider-Man anymore.
Alright, guys, now it's time for our Amazon review game. Just a quick recap Christian is going to read a 5-star Amazon review for a movie, and then I will get 2 yes or no questions to help me narrow down what the movie is. I can then either guess or ask for another review. I can then get two more yes or no questions. I can again either guess or get another review, and then I get finally my last 2 questions, and I have to guess. And if I get on the first try, it's 3 points. Second try, 2 points. Third try, 1 point. And we're keeping score for the year. Christian, I am ready when you are.
Okay. Been watching this since childhood, and still this never gets old. Perfect to watch any time for a good laugh and great action scenes. These two oddballs are a great duo, and honestly, the movies would never be the same without them. Classic action comedy, so glad Prime has it now since they didn't before. Please get the sequel as well soon.
This is clearly Hobbs and Shaw.
Yep, it's already on Prime.
Does this involve Jackie Chan?
It does.
Is this the first in a? Oh shit! Shoot. I'm trying to think. So it's either my guess is either Shanghai Noon, Shanghai Nights, or one of the Rush Hours. Is this the first movie in a series?
It is.
I'm just going. Is this Rush Hour?
It is. Man, you narrowed that down real fast.
You said like buddy cop movie or something, and I was like, or buddy movie, and I was like, that's the only one I can think of. All right, guys, thanks for checking out our episode. Before we head out, Christian, what are you going to be checking out this week?
Well, I'm gonna be doing some reading. I'm in the middle of a book now. There's not a lot coming out in theaters this week. Honestly, our theater is getting back Toy Story and Spider-Man Far From Home. So I might watch Spider-Man again. Other than that, I'm just gonna be playing some games. I'm hoping to watch Mindhunter Season 2. That's probably the biggest thing on my list for this week.
I heard it's good.
Yeah, I really, really liked the first season. I'm excited to get into the second one.
This week, I'm going to watch the D&D documentary, Secrets of Blackmoor, The True History of Dungeons and Dragons. I'm pretty excited to check that one out. I recently downloaded Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen for the Switch, so I might be messing around with that because I saw it's a pretty long game and I didn't want to go for the platinum. I'm still working for the platinum on Neo, which it's going to be rough. I don't know if I'm going to make it or not. Otherwise, that's about it. College football really starts for me this weekend, so we'll be checking out some of that as well. All right, guys, thanks for checking out our episode. If you liked what you heard, please either subscribe to our podcast or rate a review for us. We'd really appreciate it. Otherwise, if you want to reach us, we have the email address gambots.blog@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter. We are at Gambots Network. If you have a suggestion for an Amazon review game, please let us know. We'll probably try and use it. Otherwise, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.